The tour bus was quiet in a way Jelly Roll wasn't used to. No laughter, no bass thumping through the floor, just the hum of the road and the soft glow of passing streetlights. He sat alone near the window, fingers tracing the edge of a tattoo that peeked from beneath his sleeve. Ink never fades the way memories do. That was the problem. "I can't undo it," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Fans saw the smile, the jokes, the gratitude he poured into every stage like a confession. But some nights, after the applause died down, the weight came back. Not the kind measured on a scale. This one lived in his chest, a permanent choice made during a season when he didn't think he'd survive long enough to regret it. Back then, pain felt permanent too. Chaos ruled his days, and ink felt like armor, proof that the hurt was real, that he was real. He didn't imagine a future where healing would matter. He didn't imagine songs that would save people, or crowds singing his words back to him like a prayer. Now, years later, success had softened some edges, but it sharpened others. Every time he looked down, he remembered who he was when he didn't care if tomorrow came. The regret wasn't about the tattoo alone. It was about the man he was when he chose it. "I wish I could tell that version of me to wait," he admitted once, voice cracking. "Just wait." But regret, like ink, doesn't vanish. It stays. It asks to be carried. What surprised him most was how that regret changed shape. It didn't just hurt, it taught. It reminded him how far he'd climbed from the bottom. It kept him honest on stage, raw in the booth, gentle with people who were still lost in the dark places he once called home. One night, after a show, a fan approached him with shaking hands. "Your music kept me alive," she said. Jelly Roll swallowed hard. Maybe this was the trade, a mark he couldn't erase for a purpose he couldn't deny. He rolled his sleeve down and stood up straighter. The regret would always sting, but it no longer owned him. It became a reminder, not of failure, but of survival. Some things can't be undone, but some can be transformed. And for Jelly Roll, that made all the difference.
Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. The first thing Jelly Roll notices every morning isn't the sunlight sliding through the blinds or the familiar hum of Nashville waking up outside his window. It's the ink. It stares back at him from the mirror like an old ghost that refuses to move on. The lines are still sharp, the colors stubbornly bold, refusing to fade the way time is supposed to soften everything else. He rubs his hand over it, not because he hates it, not exactly, but because touching it reminds him that some things don't go away, no matter how much you grow. "There are parts of me I can't erase," he once said quietly, almost to himself. And that's the part that hurts. For years, Jelly Roll wore his past like armor. Every tattoo was a chapter, every mark a moment when survival mattered more than foresight. He didn't think about tomorrow back then. Tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. All he knew was pain, hunger, anger, and a deep need to feel seen in a world that kept looking past him. Ink was permanence in a life that felt anything but stable. Back then, regret didn't exist yet. Regret needs distance. It needs healing. It needs growth. And Jelly Roll hadn't reached any of those places when the needle buzzed against his skin. A different man in the same skin. Success changes people, but not always in the ways outsiders expect. The money came, the awards followed, crowds screamed his name, singing back lyrics that were once scribbled in notebooks stained with tears and bad decisions. Jelly Roll became a voice for the broken, the forgotten, the ones who didn't know how to ask for help. But fame has a funny way of forcing reflection. When the cameras turned off and the applause faded, he was still alone with his thoughts, alone with the body that carried every version of himself he'd ever been. The reckless kid, the angry survivor, the man who didn't believe he'd live long enough to regret anything. Now he did. "I don't regret who I was," he admitted one night, sitting across from a close friend after a show. "I regret not believing I could be more." The permanent reminder on his body wasn't just ink, it was proof of a mindset that once told him he didn't deserve a future worth protecting. That realization hit harder than any headline ever could. The weight of being seen. Fans often tell Jelly Roll how much his honesty saves them, how his songs pulled them out of darkness, how his pain made them feel less alone. What they don't always see is how heavy that responsibility feels. Every time a kid approaches him with stars in their eyes asking for advice, Jelly Roll hesitates. He wants to tell the truth, but he also wants to protect them from the parts of that truth that still ache. I see young people wanting to be hard, wanting to look like they've survived something, he said once, and I want to grab them and say, you don't need scars to be real. That's when the regret sharpens. Not because the ink defines him, but because he worries it might define someone else. He knows how easily pain becomes aesthetic, how suffering turns into a badge of honor when you don't yet understand its cost. He lived that life. He glorified the struggle because it was the only thing that made sense at the time. Now, standing on the other side, he sees how permanent choices made in temporary pain can echo for decades. And that knowledge weighs on him every single day. Conversations he can't take back. There are moments that replay in his mind like an old record stuck on the same groove. A child asking why he looks so angry in old photos. A loved one gently asking if he ever wishes he'd waited. A quiet moment backstage when he catches his reflection under harsh fluorescent lights and doesn't recognize the man he used to be. I've had conversations with people I love where I couldn't explain it, he admitted one night, because how do you explain that you didn't care if you lived long enough to regret something? That's the part that still hurts, the realization that his past pain wasn't just destructive to him, but confusing to the people who love the man he's become. Growth doesn't erase history, it just changes how loudly history speaks, and sometimes it shouts. Redemption isn't rewriting the story. If Jelly Roll has learned anything, it's that redemption doesn't mean pretending the past never happened, it means carrying it responsibly. He doesn't hide his regret, he talks about it openly, not for sympathy, but for awareness. He wants people to know that you can love yourself and still wish you'd made different choices, that healing doesn't require denying the damage, just refusing to repeat it. I'm not ashamed of surviving, he said during a late-night interview. I'm just honest about what survival cost me. The permanence of his regret became a tool instead of a wound. He uses it to start conversations most people avoid, about impulsivity, about trauma, about the way pain convinces you that nothing matters, and most importantly, about hope. Because even with something he can't undo, he refuses to believe it defines the ending of his story. Loving the man he is now. At home, in quieter moments, Jelly Roll is learning a new skill, gentleness. He practices it with his words, with his relationships, with himself. There was a time when self-compassion felt like weakness. Now it feels like survival in its healthiest form. He understands that the man who made those permanent choices didn't know any better, and punishing him forever won't change the past. But acknowledging the regret, that's necessary. It still hurts, he said softly, but it hurts in a way that reminds me I'm alive and that I care. That might be the greatest difference between who he was and who he is. Back then, he didn't care if anything lasted. Now he cares deeply about everything. A message written in ink and honesty. When fans ask him what he'd tell his younger self, Jelly Roll pauses longer than most people expect. I'd tell him that pain isn't permanent, he finally says, but the choices you make because of pain can be. That sentence lingers long after he walks away. His regret isn't about appearance, it's about belief, about the moment he believed his future wasn't worth protecting. That belief left marks he carries every day. But those same marks now fuel his mission, to reach people before they decide their story is already over. He can't undo it isn't a confession of failure, it's a testament to growth, because while Jelly Roll can't erase the past etched into his skin, he proves every day that the future is still unwritten and worth fighting for. And maybe that's the most powerful message of all. Even when something hurts forever, it doesn't have to hurt alone.